Welcome to the Behind the Girl Boss podcast, where every woman's journey takes center stage. Join us in this safe space as we explore the ins and outs of business, career, mental health, the music industry, and more. Whether you're a go-getter or a dream chaser, we've got stories for you. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok for an exclusive backstage pass. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and entertained. Welcome to the ride. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the podcast. We have another guest with us and we have Courtney. So hi Courtney.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Courtney Croucher. I am a breathwork and Pilates instructor, and I also coach women, empowering women to embody their inner body through mindset, movement, and breath, combining all the things that I do into the thing that I loved. I have been in the coaching industry for almost 5 years now. Have had many different roles in different industries prior to that, but now I'm in a place where I'm combining the modalities that have been most helpful for me on my personal growth journey and combining that with coaching. And it's been such an amazing experience. And I also have been a podcaster for like 6 years with four different reiterations of the show. So I just say I'm a certified yapper. So I'm excited to chat with you today.
I love that. Before we get into all that, I like to do a little hot seat segment to kind of just break the ice and know little fun facts. So the first one is if you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Ooh, that is a good question. Dead or alive? It's really putting me on the spot. I love that question though, and I feel like I should have an answer to this so quickly.
It's hard when you're on the spot.
It is hard when you're on the spot. I feel like I have to say Oprah. That's the only person that comes to mind. I feel like you can't go wrong with Oprah Winfrey. But I also would say, like, on the top of my mind as well, Snoop Dogg. I
I
think
feel like both of
he
them
would
would have
riot.
such cool stories. No, literally.
Yeah,
Love that.
Snoop Dogg is on top of mind right now. I think because he's on The Voice and he's kind of the Martha Stewart documentary just came out, so
Mhm.
people are like obsessed with him again. And I have revived my obsession with him just recently.
Yeah, no, I love his vibes. He always seems like a good time and like I feel like the way he like acts and speaks is not how like you would assume, and I kind of love that.
No, and he's like this like lover boy. Like he wants to
Mhm.
see people succeed and he's so sweet and everything's a rhyme and he's always smooth with it. It's just he's so cool.
No, yeah, I agree 100%. The next question is, what's one TV show, book, or podcast you recommend to everyone you meet?
I would say I've been listening to like the Skinny Confidential podcast, him and her show with Lauren and Michael Bosstick for literally since the day that they started. I was reading her blog and following along her Instagram. Prior to that, I've been a very long time follower. So I think just because they access so many different types of guests, so many different types of subjects, like you can't listen to that show and not level up your life in some sort of way. So I would say that one's super well-rounded.
Yeah, love that. And then the last one is, what's one thing you can't start your day without?
I love a green juice and an ice roller. Like the first thing I do when I open my eyes, I use this Genuine Health Greens powder. I'm not a sponsor in any way. I've just been using it literally since high school. The orange flavor is my personal favorite. That with water, I use a little frother to mix it into the water. And then I grab my ice roller and I just go back into my bed and drink my green juice and roll my face all simultaneously. And it's my favorite part of my morning.
I love that. Yeah, an ice roller. I know it has benefits too, but it just wakes me up. Like, honestly.
It's like my like mini cold plunge, and I just feel I get puffy in the morning.
Mhm.
Speaking of Lauren Bosstick and the Skinny Confidential, I use her mouth tape at night, so I peel that mouth tape off my face, and then I grab the Skinny Confidential ice roller. Again, not sponsored, just absolutely obsessed. And yeah, I've been ice rolling for years, and I literally think it's changed my facial shape. If you see us side by side, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I want to dive in a bit to your sobriety journey. What inspired you to start that?
Yeah, I've always had a gut kind of like tumultuous relationship to alcohol from a really young age. The first time I ever drank, I was in high school. It was like early days, grade 9 or 10. And I I had friends and obviously the drinking age is like 19 in Ontario where I was in school and everything. And I grew up and we had like some older friends get us a bottle of vodka, like a 26er of Smirnoff, which the thought of it literally makes me die. But
Mhm.
we thought we were so cool and just like drinking from the bottle and like chasing with whatever pop there was. And the first time I ever drank, I got absolutely blackout drunk and I didn't know what limits were, any of that. I don't even think I ate properly. Like I was not someone who was exposed necessarily to what drinking was because my parents weren't drinkers and like I would
Mhm.
have family who would drink, but I don't know, it was kind of this like weird topic. So I got blackout drunk and then the I was like not wanting to leave the party for some reason and someone like kind of like shoved me into the cab trying to like get me to go home safely and I smacked my head off the cab door and had a mild concussion. And so I didn't know until like over 10 years later that that actually created like a pattern within my brain for every time to drink to essentially like black out. And I think it's also like overconsumption as well, but like the
Mhm.
combination created this thing that as I grew older, not only did I just not have a healthy relationship to it, but I was also like quite honestly losing my memory with nights. Like
Yeah.
I would only have a couple drinks in an evening, but my memory would so foggy. So I kind of knew that like me and alcohol might not be besties. Like I would wake up the next morning feeling so anxious, so depressed, and it would last for days. I would do stupid stuff, say stupid things. I would post on my Instagram story the most ridiculous things. And I think because of the culture, it was very normalized and it's just like, oh, whatever, you were so fun. And I never became too much of like a bad person to party with. I was always really
Mhm.
fun. So I think that was actually really difficult to separate from. But I took a couple breaks with alcohol. Like there'd be 6 months at a time where I would take it off, like I would completely remove alcohol from my life. And I would feel so much better for it. And then I would feel so good that I would start drinking again. And it became a bit of a cycle where it's like, okay, it's hard to not acknowledge at the at this point, maybe I should not drink, right?
Yeah.
And I was living in Vancouver at a certain point, kind of like 2021, this would have been. And I was like living in my first big girl apartment, making big girl money, and I was out on my own, not really knowing anyone. And alcohol became the bridge to socialize and meet people. And I worked hard and I drank and partied harder, and that created a bit of a vicious cycle in saying yes to other party favors while drinking and partying. And that became is where it really started to get like obviously dangerous, and I did not like who I was becoming. I started looking at myself in the mirror and like, what am I doing? Right? I was having kind of a bit of a come to Jesus moment. And at this point now, sober curiosity is like a term, it's a buzzword.
Mhm.
And I feel like people were speaking out more openly on their relationship to alcohol without necessarily being categorized as like an alcoholic. I think for so many people, it's like if you're not a visual of Frank Gallagher, then like you don't need to
Mhm.
be sober. Like, why wouldn't you drink? It's just so normal. And it wasn't like me pouring vodka into my coffee in the morning. It was this like
Yeah.
when I drank, it was kind of a problem and I didn't like how I felt after. It wasn't always a problem, but anything bad that's ever happened has involved alcohol. And yeah, like nothing terrible happened, but I went on well, there's kind of a two-parter. So last year in May, I went to Austin. Full circle, actually. I met Lauren Bostic for the first time from the Skinny Confidential after following her for over a decade. It was the Dear Media IRL event, and I really like felt so inspired leaving that event and to meet your idol in person. It was like kind
Yeah.
of crazy, and she's even better in person, which is like you typically people say don't meet your idols. And I got really like messy that night. Me and my girlfriend went off in Austin, and we honestly, I can look back and say that was like a riot. It was so much fun. And I can laugh about it because like nothing terrible happened, but
Mhm.
was it messy and did it serve my highest good? Not at all. Had one of the best dirty martinis I've ever had in Austin. Like it was amazing time, but did I like how I felt the next day or how I felt about myself or any of those things? No. And the following, about 2 weeks later, I went to an event run by Hay House, which is the publisher, Louise Hay's publishing company. And all of like my favorite authors are part of
Mhm.
that publisher. And so I was able to have the privilege to see so many inspirational people speak, including like Mel Robbins and Brendan Bouchard. And the person who I really look up to is Gabby Bernstein. And I saw her in person, and she never said anything explicitly about sobriety, but she was 25 when she got sober. I was leaving Tampa from that event, and I was drinking a little bit on that trip, nothing crazy. Had a couple drinks, but Then I got to the airport and I whipped out Gabby Bernstein's book, The Universe Has Your Back. And I had read this a couple times already, but there was something about like reading that book. I was on the plane and I like had this moment. It felt like it's gonna sound woo-woo, but I had this like higher calling telling me that if you want to like live up to your highest potential, you need to stop drinking and doing drugs. Like it's not serving you and you don't need to do this anymore. And the previous times I've taken breaks from alcohol, it was like I should take a break because
Mhm.
either I did too much
Yeah.
one night, I was a little too went a little too hard, or I said something embarrassing, or I felt that it was just like there was some sort of shame around it, whereas like I really need to take a break kind of thing. Where this was like an option and I could remove alcohol from my life. And it came from a different place of empowerment of like, not that I have to, but I want to. I want to no longer have this be a factor in my life. And now it's been over a year and a half. And I mean, there's lots of 6 month periods that added up to
Mhm.
that of life without alcohol, but this has been
Yeah.
such a different experience because it was just like truly one day cold turkey. We're not going back. There was no one last hurrah. Okay, let's have a couple drinks before I end this for good. I literally just woke up. It was a Monday that I got home the Sunday night from a flight, and I woke up that Monday morning and I was walking through Trinity Bellwoods and I literally called my mom and I said, I'm never drinking again. And I don't know how to explain it, but this is what's happening. And she was very supportive. I've always terrified my parents with like my relationship to alcohol
Yeah.
just because they could see that like it wasn't serving my highest good. I would get really dark. And I haven't turned back since. So it's kind of I would say a unique story in the sense that like it wasn't rooted in alcoholism per se, but like
Yeah.
when I did drink, I there was definitely things that I didn't like about it, and I definitely didn't have a healthy relationship to it. So it's a bit nuanced in that sense, but the difference was going from shame to empowerment.
Yeah. And when you stopped drinking, the friends that like you hung out with, did they accept that right away and support it, or did they kind of question what you were doing since you were like the fun one of the group, I guess?
Yeah, to put it bluntly, like not a single person that I was really friends with previously are friends with me now. At least my really close friends at the time,
Hmm.
they're all gone. They're all removed because they didn't get it. I think that when you decide to like put down the bottle and stop engaging in that, like even though I'm a very fun and social person still, there's something that kind of like triggers people about their relationship to alcohol
Yeah.
or drinking or doing whatever else. And I think that they think you're judging them. And I'm not. People can drink around me. I don't care. I definitely have a very different relationship to going out in the sense that I don't want to be out past midnight. Like I'm
Yeah.
tired, I'm going to bed. But there's definitely something that shifts. And I also think that when you are bonded by alcohol and going out and a lot of those surface level connections, that quickly fades away when you're sober because you simply just, the way you look at people, the way that you connect with people completely changes. And I think it was mutual. Like they didn't want to hang out with me anymore because I don't drink, and I didn't like them anymore because I
Yeah,
wasn't drinking.
for sure.
One thing I realized about people that I look up to, I love self-development, I love authors and podcasters and really big people. And
Yeah.
the one thing I've seen is like the most successful, happy people. I mean, there's lots of successful people who drink, and I mean, there's lots of stories on that, but there's a lot of people that like truly seem happy and fulfilled. I feel like the happiest and most fulfilled people aren't using alcohol as the only bridge to find connection, right? And I
Yeah.
felt that there were so many times when I was out where I would be at a dinner, maybe not having fun or liking the topic of conversation, usually very surface level, gossiping about others, very just like not high vibrational in any way. And then you're like
Mhm.
drinking more to hopefully have more fun kind of thing. And
Yeah.
eventually you're so drunk that you think you're having fun, but it's just a perceived notion of it. And so what I find fun now and what I find really attractive from a friendship and like a night out is so different. So there's like no shame or blame or hatred on anyone part of that past on my end. It's just like we went separate ways
Yeah.
because it's just no longer aligned.
Yeah. And nowadays, how do you kind of navigate social situations where there is alcohol? And do people ever like make you feel like, oh, like it's just one drink, like you can have one drink, it's fine? Like, how do you navigate that?
I think people used to do that, especially previous times when I was taking breaks from alcohol when I wasn't as like stern on it. I think people were more inclined to try to pressure me because I was kind of one foot in, one foot out.
Yeah.
But I think my energy around like, no, I don't drink, like there's
Hmm.
not room for discussion. I think people have been a little bit more just accepting of it. I think your energy around something really tells a narrative. Like if you're kind of like, oh, I'm not drinking right now versus no, I don't drink. Like it's a very different
Yeah.
energy and people are a little bit less inclined to question it. I definitely have had experiences like over the last year and a half where people are rude about it. More people that like I've never met before. You know, if you're at a bar and a guy, like I remember this one time when I most recently got sober, like this was probably that happened in May, so then this is probably June. It was like not even a month in. I was at a bar and this guy offered me a drink and I was like, I'd love a Diet Coke. And he's like, just a Diet Coke. I'm like, yeah, I don't drink. And he's like, he looked me up and down, kind of like, really? And just gave me this weird energy around it. And I literally looked at him. I was like, you can keep the Diet Coke. Go fuck yourself. I don't
Literally,
know if I'm
like,
allowed to swear on that.
oh
Sorry.
yeah, you can.
Okay, good.
No, it's just crazy that
But it was just
people are like
like
that.
ew, right? And it's
Yeah.
like also just I feel like there's such a level of certain guys just thinking that like you're gonna have one drink and want to sleep with them or something, and it's like go away, you're disgusting. So that definitely have had a couple of those situations, but I would say I don't even surround myself with people who are like
Hmm.
begging me to drink. I feel like I've found more community in places that are more accepting, but it's also been really helpful to have just like a drink in hand. So if you're at a position or like at some sort of event, social thing where you have a drink in hand, it doesn't matter what the drink is, it kind of avoids the question of, oh, do you want a drink? Because you already have something in your hand. So I find that if it's not like, if I'm not around people that kind of know me, or if I'm in a weird position, as long as I have a drink in hand, one, when you're getting a little bit anxious or like nervous about something, having something to sip on, just in general, can help you avoid that like coughing fit that you can get when you're really anxious and like, oh my God, I don't know what to
Yeah.
say. Not that I get that often, especially now, but previously, yes. And then the other thing is, yeah, people aren't like, oh, what are you drinking? I'll get you something if you're empty-handed because you already have something. So
Yeah.
I just like to have something in hand. I'll even sometimes ask a bartender to put it in like a wine glass or something so that it avoids the question. Sometimes you can tell, sometimes you don't. But I think most of all, the way that my energy has approached it has helped kind of negate any of the awkwardness that comes with social settings and just like owning your decision and having full confidence
For
around
sure.
it.
Yeah. And transitioning into Pilates and breath work, did you kind of start doing those things during your sobriety journey, or was this something that you did previously as well?
Prior to sobriety. So, Pilates for me, I had a different relationship to working out as well. I think like alcohol was a big factor in just a full self-sabotage and a very all or
Hmm.
nothing mentality with everything. So, I had a really poor relationship to my body as well, which alcohol also helped numb that, right? So, especially when you go out and you want to feel confident. So, with working out, I was always really into like strenuous, like CrossFit, will kill my body until it literally breaks down. I had so many injuries. Not that anything's wrong with any of those types of things. It's just like I definitely was wearing and tearing down on my body.
Yeah.
And then sometime during COVID, I basically sprained my ankle so badly that it should have been broken, but I have like hyperextended joints. So
Okay.
my left ankle bent so far, it tore every ligament but didn't break. And the doctor told me it
Wow.
would have been better for me to just break it, actually. So that was convenient. So that was really rough because I really needed movement to mentally feel like
Hmm.
good. And I had been following Melissa Wood Health, like Melissa Wood Tepperberg from New
Yeah.
York. She had a big platform and I was hearing about her a lot. And I just liked her Instagram and I loved her sense of style. I'm really inspired by her. And I had never tried her Pilates workouts though, because I thought Pilates was stupid. Like I thought it was so slow and boring and whatever. I thought it was gonna be more like yoga, which no hate to yoga either. I'm a little bit more of an intense person and I like certain vibey music and all of
Hmm.
that. So I didn't know that like Pilates would ever be my thing. And then I started doing her workouts because it's all I could have done during that injury, like
Yeah.
being on the mat. Certain things I couldn't do, obviously, but for the most part, it allowed me to move my body in some sort of way while I was navigating an injury. And then because we were in and out of lockdowns and things like that, this digital platform actually became really convenient. And she was doing meditations on there as well. So I started regularly meditating. And breath work I had learned about in 2017 when I went to a Tony Robbins event. It was like a 4 day full immersion in Chicago. And the Wim Hof Iceman guy, he talked about breath work there. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of breath work and cold exposure. And I thought he was nuts. I'm like, this is weird. I tried the cold shower. I thought y'all are crazy. The breath work stuff, I was like, I don't like the feeling. Like, I don't like the kind of almost lightheadedness that it
Yeah.
can give you, especially the first time you try something like the Wim Hof method. Oh my gosh, the head buzz. And I didn't know what tetany was, which is when your like hands start to clam up and everything. It does go away, but all of these sensations, it freaked me out. So I was really resistant to it. So like Pilates and breathwork I'd known of for years, but hadn't embraced it. And then Pilates, I embraced it through an injury. Breathwork came through like anxiety, really being trying different things, navigating a deep sense of anxiety and overwhelm. And I would say that Othership here in Toronto, the cold and hot therapy place, it's like they call it the House of Transformation. They do a lot of breath work there, and I really felt that to be helpful, especially in addition to the hot
Mhm.
and cold. And that was like a really slow journey of, I used to hate saunas. I never thought I would ever do a cold plunge. Now I'm like obsessed. And the breath work too, like now I'm a facilitator.
Yeah.
So it was like a really interesting over time, something that unraveled or led my way to down this path. But it's all been kind of little little pivots that have gotten me down this like path of utilizing these certain modalities and noticing the physical changes with breath work and Pilates. It was like, wow, I feel really good. I have less anxiety. I haven't had an injury in God knows how long, right? I think people should still like find different forms of movement. I still
Yeah.
walk a lot. I don't really run, but I'll do different types of cardio. And then I love like weightlifting. I don't lift too heavy these days, but Pilates is my predominant like form of movement. And then breath work and meditation, it's like if I don't do that, the wheels start to fall off. So I feel like now it's become this thing of brushing my teeth, and it's actually hard to imagine my
Mhm.
life prior to those modalities. But when you learn about the nervous system regulation, that was a big unlock for me because I didn't know I was operating out of such a dysregulated state for so long. And that was having me in positions of so much anxiety, being so
Yeah.
reactive and unable to sleep, and just all of those things that all funnel into one, which is like why I take such a holistic approach to everything because you can't separate one without the other.
Yeah. And when did you decide that you wanted to be an instructor and what kind of like credentials do you need to do that?
It's funny because I've always wanted to be a fitness instructor. I
Okay.
debated it many years ago when I was in high school. I was working at a gym and I was obsessed with fitness, but just for different reasons and a different outlook. But I had a fitness instructor who I loved, who I ended up working for her. She was also a real estate broker, and I just thought she was so incredible. And this woman was, she had a daughter my age, so you can like imagine the age difference. And she looked incredible, and she had such a young spirit, and she was always with the cool music. And so I loved what she did as an instructor, and I thought, I want to be an instructor, right? And then I just like never did it. I was, so busy through school. I was working 3 jobs, putting myself through university. So taking any time to do any kind of certification was just like not the thing at the
Yeah.
time. And then when I moved out to Vancouver, that was during the pandemic, so everything was closed down and the thought of even doing that was crazy. But even when I was out in Vancouver, like in my height of my partying, I was obsessed with Pilates and spin. I would go to spin class like multiple times a week, and I thought maybe I'll become a spin instructor. And that's when spin was really popping off, and I thought,
Yeah.
how cool would that be? So that's actually like I really want to become a spin instructor. And then I ended up moving to Toronto, and I was working in sales at a tech company, and I was still in coaching, and there's like a couple different things I was doing. Was kind of lost in my life at that point. I was like kind of blew up my life for a bit to kind of figure it all out again. and I got laid off in my tech sales role. And then I remember like crying to my mom, like, I should have gotten my fitness instructor and like certification. Everyone in the fitness industry was basically hiring. I just felt like I knew so many people, and it seemed to be that everyone was searching for instructors because there were so many studios opening up coming out
Yeah.
of the pandemic, and there was a lot of restructuring, and people were craving group fitness again. And I know I
Mhm.
was as a client. And so I've always been obsessed with health and fitness. I like really did a lot of education in high school and university, but nothing that was like a certification per se. Then I went and got my certification. So I started with my CanFit Pro first, which is kind of like I can't say it's the thing that will help you be a really great instructor, but it's kind of where you need to start just because it's so, I would say, boring.
Mhm.
And like, there's some general things about like tempo and how to, structure a playlist, but to truly like be an effective instructor, I don't know that that would have ever been enough. And then I got my Pilates certification through Equinox and have continued to like, grow in my learnings from there. But now I went from like never teaching a class to 4 studios within 12 months, and privileged to teach at some of the best studios here in Toronto. And I think because I've been a podcaster and in coaching and all of that, speaking to people, like leading a room was nothing I was worried about. It
Yeah.
was more of just like, how do I structure a class and teach people what they're doing with their bodies, but like not have them, hurt themselves or
Yeah.
anything. And that was a thing where I don't know that there are certain things you can teach. I think there's certain things that are intuitive and that like you might just
Mhm.
be really good at. And when I started teaching fitness, it was like something clicked. I knew I found like a calling, and
Yeah.
I'm obsessed, and I was grateful to have an opportunity at a studio that needed a lot of like substitutes. And so I went from only having, a couple classes a week to like teaching a ton. And that gave me the opportunity to learn and grow really quickly rather than like, I don't think that necessarily time is the thing that makes you improve. It's just the reps. And so
Yeah.
getting a lot of reps under my belt in a really short span of time helped me just completely excel.
Yeah. And right now, how many classes a week do you teach in? Like, is there some days that you do like multiple in a day, and is that like difficult?
Every day that I teach, I'm teaching at least a double or a triple.
Okay.
I teach 14 classes a week. I'm now at 3 studios. I have recently left the fourth. I decided to refine
Yeah, it's a
where I
lot.
was going. But it's cool. It's cool to have this many opportunity. And yeah, like 2 out of 3 studios are hot studios. So definitely being in the hot room definitely feels different teaching a double than in a regular temperatured room.
Mhm.
Did you ask me how I do that? Like, how do I
Yeah,
function?
like how, like I feel like my body, I mean, I guess it's different when you're an instructor maybe, but I feel like my body would like shut down doing that many in a day. So how do you kind of make
You
sure
get
that,
adrenaline. You
okay,
actually
yeah.
get adrenaline, and I'm obsessed with it. I love it. So I feel like that does keep me going. But are
Yeah.
there days that my body feels like it's shutting down? Yes, I'm always sore. I definitely have to really do more now, even more so for recovery and stuff. Like I was
Mhm.
always working out a lot, but I feel like my level of recovery has to be there. There are more days now that I legitimately will not work out. Like there's certain days if I wake up on like a Sunday and I don't teach that day, I might actually just be horizontal the whole day because I know how much I'll be teaching that week.
Yeah.
Depending on how I feel, but I feel like I'm pretty in tune with my body now. But yeah, I have to sleep like 8 or 9 hours, or else I legitimately can't think, I can't speak, I can't move. It's brutal.
Yeah.
And I also have really been diligent about electrolytes and proper nutrition, which sounds so back to basics, but it's so true for
Mhm.
performance. And just little tips around like sleep hygiene, like taping my mouth at night, doing like a legs up on the wall meditation before bed, allowing my nervous system to relax. Like that has helped me sleep better, which then helps me perform better the next day. All of that. The way that any professional athletes have to train for their role in performance, I feel like we have to do as instructors, but also like even if you're an entrepreneur, right? For you to show up
Yeah.
effectively, there are things that you have to put in place that's just like part of your quote unquote training. And by investing in yourself and your mind, your body, your soul, all of that helps you perform. So I have to be a bit of a psycho about my routine and like protect my hours of sleeping and all
Yeah.
of that in order to do all of the classes I'm teaching because that's not the only thing I do. So
Yeah.
it definitely is easy to get burnt out if you're not careful. But yeah, I love it. And there's definitely a lot of hours outside of the actual teaching where you're planning the classes, the
Hmm.
playlists, like all of those things. But I mean, I help women feel good in their bodies. I'm a DJ, DJing
Yes.
playlists, and I tell people what to do. That's like literally, I can't ask for more.
How do you kind of pick the songs that you want? Like, is it a certain vibe or do you just change it up a lot?
So based on how I feel, do a different playlist every single class I
Okay.
teach. So I don't repeat playlists. I might have like not that I've never done it, I've definitely done it
Hmm.
before, like once or twice kind of thing if I'm like last minute subbing or something. But for the most part, it's a brand new playlist every single class I teach. It's based on just like vibes of what I'm obsessed with. What is the class I'm teaching? Like, is it a hot hit Pilates
Hmm.
with hit movements or is it full mat series kind of thing. So it depends on what the vibe of the class is, but
Yeah.
also the time of the day, the vibe of the year. Sometimes, especially in the winter, I feel like I go more sad girl, R&B, kind of
Hmm.
vibey, like a lot of SZA, Summer Walker, mixed
Yes.
with a little bit of like kind of like the vibey house music. But then there's other times that I'm blasting hip hop and like crazy EDM that I never thought I was going to be into house music. So it is kind of funny that like that's kind of my life now. But I mean, even if you've ever been to Jaybird, I teach there and they just have like a very different vibe in the way that the style is. You're teaching in a hot, dark room with candle lighting and it's a non-traditional studio. And they just have a very signature style. And so like the
Hmm.
type of music I play there versus the type of music I play at Solus might be a little bit different. There's definitely crossover, but yeah, it's kind of there's like a method to the madness, but I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah.
But I definitely spend hours finding new music. I go to like the depths of the internet trying to find music, and if I'm like out somewhere and I hear a cool song, Shazam immediately. It's like a
I love
constant
that.
search of cool music.
I love that. And then the last part of my podcast, I ask people on Instagram to ask you questions, and I picked two of my favorite ones. So the first one is, how do you personally celebrate milestones in your sobriety journey?
I feel like so the first year mark, I went to a place in Vancouver. I was visiting there. And it was like a hot and cold place, which I love sauna and cold plunge, so it was very
Hmm.
fitting. And then I went for a little like dinner after, a little mocktail situation. That was beautiful. And then this last like year and a half mark, the 18th month mark, I had some girlfriends over again for some mocktails. I feel like it's usually like a mixture of like something wellness and then something
Yeah.
mocktail related. I'm trying to get better at like celebrating the wins. I think 6 month milestones are kind of cool, especially
Yeah.
for me, the year and a half was pretty cool because I've actually never gone that long in like
Hmm.
previous breaks or anything like that. So this was really feeling good and I feel so much just like committed into this lifestyle now.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to find something that like makes you feel special because it kind of creates that loop in your brain of the people talk about the trigger, the action, and the reward and how to build a habit. And so when you loop something with pleasure and dopamine, then you're more likely to stick to it as well. So
Yeah.
having like a thing that you feel good about, even if like I sometimes struggle to celebrate my own wins, it's kind of like, okay, on to the next. Like I don't take minutes to relish in something. I'm trying to become better at that because also the relationship that you have with yourself is indicative of other relationships in your life.
Yeah.
So to like give yourself a like pat on the back and like, yeah, I'm doing the damn thing, I think is important because if you're not hyping yourself up, like what are you doing?
Exactly. 100%. And then the last question is, what advice do you have for someone who wants to start going to Pilates classes but are sort of intimidated by them?
I think understanding where the intimidation is rooted from, like, are you afraid of someone judging you? Are you afraid that you won't be able to physically do the class? Like, where being able to identify the fear, I think is really important before we even try to overcome it because
Yeah.
you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So I think really being able to find where it's rooted in and then find a class or a place that has good reviews, that feels welcoming. You can feel the vibe of something. Typically online, I mean, everything's online. It's a digital resume. So you can
Hmm.
kind of find something that maybe works for you. And there's just so many out there that are, like I said, complete different aesthetics and energies. So you can always message an instructor or a studio to ask, like, what would the best class or instructor to be for like a beginner. But I mean, people ask this all the time. Like I had a girl last week who had never done a Pilates class come to my hot Pilates class. And she said after like, "Girl, that was amazing, but what the fuck?" Also, she was
Hmm.
so impressed by how every muscle in her body kind of hurt, but
Yeah.
all these little movements. And she asked me if it ever gets easier. And I'm like, no, but you do get stronger. And
Hmm.
so you really can't, the only way out of that discomfort is through it, like just
Yeah.
kind of ripping the band-aid off, taking it as you can. So if you need to take breaks, if you need to opt for the more supportive movement, or maybe opt out of using a band or a prop or a weight or whatever. There's always a way to be a beginner, and like don't be afraid of being a beginner. I feel like we're so afraid of that as adults, of trying something new. And I think when you're able to identify what the fear is, especially like the fear of being judged, I think is really predominant,
Yeah.
especially in the fitness industry. And I don't know, if you're amongst a lot of Pilates princesses and they're matching sweats and all of the things and they go to Pilates every day, it could feel intimidating. I totally get it. But I think just really having confidence of like, I'm happy to be a beginner. I'm here to learn something new and try something new. And I don't care what I look like. I just want to be able to enjoy the experience. I think when you have that
Hmm.
mentality, it helps shape the experience. And also, yeah, if you're nervous, like tell the instructor, be like, girl, this is my first class. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm excited to be here. When you lead with that energy, it's like, what is the worst that could happen?
100%. I agree. Well, that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much again for coming on and sharing all this and sharing your story. Before you leave, do you want to shout out any of your socials, where people can find you, where they can follow your work and
Yeah,
journey?
absolutely. I'm not sure when this is coming out, but I have a new podcast launching very soon. It's called Like a Baddie Podcast. My Instagram handle is at Courtney Croucher. Croucher is Croucher. Courtney with a C. And yeah, that's basically, you can find me everywhere on Courtney Croucher. Instagram's like my main platform. The TikTok I haven't totally figured out for my own profile personally.
Hmm.
I love to scroll, but don't really post on there. But yeah, anything that I have available and newsletters and things like that are all linked to my Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.